Emotional resilience is not about having a shield around your heart. It's about having a heart that can break and still beat with purpose. Throughout history, the greatest philosophers didn't just wrestle with abstract ideas. They wrestled with the hardest parts of being human: grief, fear, betrayal, despair. They didn't tell us how to avoid pain. They taught us how to live through it without losing ourselves. So in this chapter, we're going to explore how the world's sharpest minds thought about suffering, strength, and the inner architecture of resilience. And we'll see how their ideas can still hold us today when our world feels unstable and our emotions feel too big to carry. Let's begin where many conversations on resilience begin: the Stoics. The Stoic philosophers, like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca, are often misunderstood. People think they teach emotional suppression, that you should feel nothing. But that's not what they meant. They didn't say don't feel, they said don't be ruled by what you feel. Epictetus put it like this: it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. To the Stoics, life was full of chaos. Pain was guaranteed. But your power lay in your response. They believed that emotional resilience was the ability to stay rooted in your values, even when life becomes unpredictable. So when you're abandoned or betrayed, or when a door slams shut, they wouldn't say stop feeling sad. They'd say feel it, but don't let it define you. They taught that every challenge was an opportunity to practice your character, that every hardship revealed whether you were guided by impulse or by principle, and they believed you could train for adversity. Just like a muscle, resilience could be strengthened through practice. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and philosopher, wrote his meditations in the midst of war, illness, and political unrest. But his writing wasn't dramatic. It was humble, reflective, and calm. One of his most powerful insights is this: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. To Marcus, peace wasn't found in controlling the world. It was found in controlling your interpretation of the world. That doesn't mean you deny injustice or pretend everything is fine. It means you choose to respond with clarity, not chaos. You remind yourself, I can't stop the storm, but I can anchor myself within it. That is emotional resilience, not a numb detachment, but an active, intentional composure. But resilience isn't just about logic and control. It's also about integration, making room for contradiction, and growing from the struggle itself. This is where existentialist philosophers come in, like Søren Kierkegaard, Jean-Paul Sartre, and Albert Camus. They didn't shy away from life's darkest questions. They leaned in. Kierkegaard believed that despair was part of becoming truly human. He wrote, "To be a self is to be in despair." Not because despair is the end, but because it's the beginning of awakening. He argued that real freedom comes when you confront the emptiness, the fear, the absurdity, and still choose to live with meaning. Camus took that even further. He described life as inherently absurd, a constant tension between our longing for order and the world's randomness. But he didn't suggest surrendering to nihilism. He said, revolt. In the depth of winter, I finally learned that within me there lay an invincible summer. To Camus, resilience was about defying despair, not with false hope, but with honest resistance. You keep going. Not because it's easy, but because you choose to find meaning in the act of continuing. That is strength that no outcome can take from you. Now let's shift eastward for a moment, with the teachings of Laozi, the ancient Chinese philosopher behind Taoism. While not often labeled in the Western canon, Laozi's insights into emotional resilience are profound. He wrote in the Tao Te Ching, "Water is fluid, soft, and yielding, but water will wear away rock which is rigid and cannot yield." That's the paradox of emotional strength. True resilience doesn't always look like defiance or grit. Sometimes it looks like adaptation. Water bends but does not break. It moves around obstacles without losing itself. Laozi's teaching reminds us, resilience is not stiffness, it's flexibility. Sometimes the strongest response to pain is not resistance, but acceptance, letting the emotion come, letting it pass, and choosing your next move from a place of flow, not force, but what about the emotions that linger, the ones that won't let go. This is where Aristotle offers insight. He didn't believe in suppressing emotions. He believed in educating them. In his view, virtue lies in finding the right balance between extremes. He wrote, "Anybody can become angry, that is easy. But to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, at the right time, for the right purpose, and in the right way, that is not within everybody's power and is not easy." In this one sentence, Aristotle gives us a roadmap for emotional resilience. He's not saying don't feel. He's saying feel wisely. Resilience, in this view, is emotional intelligence. It's understanding your emotions, not being enslaved by them. It's not about perfection. It's about practice. You fall out of balance, you reflect, you recenter. Over time, you become someone who can navigate emotional storms without capsizing. Let's bring in one more voice, Nietzsche, because his philosophy is often misunderstood, as harsh or brutal, but beneath the provocations lies something deeply life-affirming. Nietzsche didn't tell you to avoid suffering, he told you to own it. To use it, he said, to live is to suffer, to survive is to find some meaning in the suffering. He believed in the power of transformation, that through hardship we don't just endure, we evolve. Resilience for Nietzsche wasn't just about surviving pain. It was about transcending it by turning it into something creative. This is what he meant by becoming who you are, not some fixed identity, but a process of becoming through fire, through loss, through reinvention. In his words, he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. That why doesn't need to be grand. It just needs to be real, something you choose, something that carries you forward. So what do all these philosophers across time and culture have in common? They didn't give us quick fixes. They gave us frameworks. They said, the world may not get easier, but you can get stronger, not by numbing out or pushing away emotions, but by meeting them with depth, reflection, and choice. They taught that resilience isn't found in having no fear, but in learning how to walk with fear. It's not never falling apart. It's always putting yourself back together, with more self-awareness, more grace, more purpose. So if you're in the thick of something hard, if you feel like your emotions are too big, too intense, too messy, remember, philosophers were writing for you, not for the comfortable, for the suffering, for the uncertain, for the ones asking, how do I live through this? And their answer wasn't simple, but it was powerful. You feel, you choose, you grow. That is the root of emotional resilience, not a hardened heart, but an open one, tested by life, refined by thought, and anchored in something deeper than fear, because, in the end, resilience isn't about being unbreakable. It's about becoming someone who no longer fears breaking, because you always rise. What if I told you that it's possible to become someone so resilient, so grounded, so mentally unshakable, that nothing and no one, not betrayal, not loss, not failure, can truly break you? Not a fantasy, not a delusion, but a mindset, a way of living, a version of you that doesn't crack under pressure, but becomes sharper, stronger, because the truth is, life will test you. Again and again, the only question is, will you be the one who bends or the one who breaks? Let's talk about how to become the version of you that no one can break. To build unbreakable strength, you first have to understand where true power comes from. It's not physical, it's not social, and it sure as hell isn't about pretending. To be tough, it's internal, invisible, built quietly like a tree growing roots underground before ever reaching for the sky. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Let that sink in, because the unbreakable version of you isn't afraid of chaos. He or she knows that chaos is inevitable, but control, that lives in your response. Most people break because they never took control of what's theirs, their emotions, their thoughts, their focus. They react, they lash out, they are to blame. The version of you that no one can break responds with clarity, with purpose. It begins by mastering your inner world before you ever try to conquer the outer one. Here's a harsh truth. If you see failure as defeat, you will break. But if you see failure as fuel, you become indestructible. The ancient Japanese art of kintsugi, where broken pottery is repaired with gold, teaches us this. Breakage isn't the end, it's transformation. Friedrich Nietzsche put it plainly. That which does not kill us makes us stronger. But Nietzsche wasn't advocating blind optimism. He meant this. Suffering is inevitable, but if you face it consciously, it becomes a forge. You don't become unbreakable by avoiding pain. You become unbreakable by facing it and learning from it. So when you get knocked down, and you will, don't ask, why me? Ask, what is this here to teach me? That shift in mindset. It's the foundation of resilience. Most people think identity is fixed, like a name or a birthmark. It's not. It's a story you keep telling yourself, and you have the power to rewrite it. If you keep telling yourself, I'm weak, I'm a failure, I'm not like them, you'll live that out. But what if you started telling a new story? The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre said, man is nothing else but what he makes of himself. In other words, you are not your past, you are your choices. You become unbreakable when your identity is built, not inherited, when you choose discipline over comfort, purpose over pleasure, growth over safety. Write down the traits of the unbreakable version of you. Is it clarity, discipline, compassion, resolve? Now live them daily, not perfectly, but intentionally, because that's how identity gets forged, like iron in fire. Here's where most people sabotage their own growth. They outsource responsibility. He hurt me. They abandoned me. I couldn't do it because you want to be unbreakable. Own everything, not because it's always your fault, but because it's always your response. Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Radical. Self-responsibility means you stop waiting for the world to change and start changing how you show up. It's not about blame. It's about reclaiming your power. Every time you say, this is in my hands, you build unshakable strength. Every time you choose discipline over excuses, you become harder to break, not because you're invincible, but because you're undeniable. True. Strength is not loud, it's quiet. Stillness isn't weakness, its power is held in reserve. In today's world, everyone is reacting, scrolling, shouting, panicking, but the unbreakable version of you? He pauses. She waits. They think. Tao Te Ching says, do you have the patience to wait till your mud settles and the water is clear? Stillness lets you see, clearly, strategically. It lets you detach from emotion so you don't get pulled into every storm. Practice stillness through journaling, meditation, solitude. It sharpens your instincts. It gives you clarity when others are consumed by chaos. Stillness is your anchor in the storm. Don't underestimate it. To become the version of you that no one can break is not a one-time decision. It's a path, a daily practice, a mindset that gets reinforced through action. You choose it every time you rise when it's easier to stay down, every time you reflect instead of react, every time you face pain instead of fleeing it. And slowly, without needing to announce it, you become solid, rooted, free, because nothing can break the one who's already met the worst and kept walking. So ask yourself, who am I becoming and what am I building? Because when you build from within, no one and nothing can tear it down. So, you've decided to become the version of yourself that no one can break. But life won't. Just test you once. There's no final boss you defeat and walk away victorious forever. There's loss, grief, betrayal, sudden change, trauma that doesn't knock. It kicks down the door. So how do you keep going, artisan, and growing? How do you build the kind of resilience that doesn't just survive, but transforms through suffering? Let's get into the real practices, grounded in psychology and philosophy, that make you unshakable in the face of life's most brutal tests. First, stop asking, how do I get back to who I was? That version of you is gone, and that's okay. When trauma hits or your world collapses, people often try to rewind. But resilience doesn't mean returning to your old self. It means rebuilding a stronger, deeper, wiser one. Carl Jung said, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. Post-traumatic growth is real, and it begins when you stop resisting change and start shaping it. So ask, what does this pain demand of me? What new part of myself is being asked to rise? That's your starting point. Pain without processing becomes poison. It gets stored, suppressed, and it leaks out through anxiety, rage, addiction, self-sabotage. So, if you want to become resilient, you have to feel what you've been avoiding. The Stoics weren't emotionless. They were emotionally disciplined. Seneca wrote, "If you really want to escape the things that harass you, what you're needing is not to be in a different place, but to be a different person." That person is someone who doesn't run from grief but sits with it, who doesn't mask heartbreak but learns from it. Practice emotional honesty. Journal what hurts. Name the emotion without judgment. Talk to someone who listens without trying to fix, because facing your emotions is not weakness, it's alchemical. It's how you turn suffering into strength. When everything feels uncertain, rituals anchor you. It might sound simple, even cliché, but consistency is how you create stability in chaos. Daily practices, like walking, journaling, meditating, or simply waking at the same time, send a powerful message to your nervous system. You are safe, you have control. Marcus Aurelius. Journaled every day in the middle of wars and political storms. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Rituals are your structure when the world has none. They build discipline when your motivation is gone. They are your self-rescue plan, executed one small act at a time." When life hits hard, the most dangerous thing you can do is isolate. Resilient people know healing happens in connection. The philosopher Aristotle wrote, "Man is by nature a social animal. Your nervous system calms in a safe connection, whether it's a therapist, a trusted friend, or a support group. Do not try to go it alone. Being vulnerable enough to say, 'I'm not okay,' is an act of strength. Let others hold you when you forget how to stand. Let the community remind you of who you are when pain tries to erase you. Don't underestimate this. Isolation breaks people. Connection rebuilds them. This is one of the most underrated mindsets for resilience, anti-fragility, coined by Nassim Taleb. It means this: some things don't just survive pressure, they grow because of it. Think of your muscles. You tear them down, they rebuild stronger. Now apply that principle to your mindset. Every challenge is a chance to adapt, not just endure. So the next time life punches you in the gut, ask, how do I become better from this, not just bitter? That question alone puts you in the mindset of growth. Like Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, said, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." Be anti-fragile. Turn the chaos into fuel. One of the hardest things to face is loss of people, dreams, parts of yourself. Grief isn't just about mourning. It's about reintegrating what's been torn apart. Buddhist philosophy teaches that impermanence is the only constant. Everything changes, everything ends. Resisting this causes suffering. Accepting it creates peace. The Buddha said, "You only lose what you cling to." Resilience doesn't mean forgetting who or what you've lost. It means learning how to carry it with grace, create space to grieve, but also create meaning. Ask, what did they teach me? How can I live in a way that honors what's gone? Grief becomes a sacred teacher if you let it. Trauma shrinks your world. It convinces you that you're not safe, that the future is dangerous. That trust is foolish, but you can train your nervous system to expand again. Resilience is deeply physical. Practice grounding techniques. Feel your feet on the floor. Focus on slow, deep breaths. Look around and name 5 things you see. These aren't gimmicks, they're ways to rewire your brain out of survival mode. Neuroscience shows that practices like breathwork and cold exposure increase stress tolerance. So, when life turns up the heat, you don't melt, you adapt. Resilience isn't about never feeling afraid. It's about teaching your body. We've been here before, and we made it. Most people don't need more information. They need intention. Resilient people live with clarity. They know what matters because they've stripped away what doesn't. They've stared into the void and come back with focus. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard said, "Purity of heart is to will one thing." So ask yourself, what is the one thing I won't compromise no matter what life throws at me? Your answer is your compass. Use it, align to it, make decisions with it. It will guide you through the fog, through loss, through transition. Because when you know who you are, you don't get lost in what happens to you. This is the part no one wants to hear, but everyone needs to. There's no final version of you. You'll evolve, you'll stumble, you'll get hit in ways you didn't prepare for. And that's okay. Resilience isn't about becoming flawless. It's about becoming faithful to your path, to your process, to your deeper self. The ancient philosopher Heraclitus said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it is not the same river and he is not the same man." So stop chasing a static version of strength. Instead ask, how can I grow roots that bend but don't break? How can I keep becoming even when it hurts? Because in the end, resilience is not a destination. It's a rhythm, a relationship with life itself. It's falling and rising, hurting and healing, letting go and beginning again. You are allowed to cry, to scream, to pause, but then rise quietly, powerfully, authentically. And when you do, you'll know. You're not the same person you were. You're stronger, wiser, unbreakable. Trauma changes you, but that change doesn't always mean destruction. Sometimes, if you choose it, trauma becomes the soil where a new self takes root, not despite the pain. Because of it, this is the heart of post-traumatic growth, a term coined by psychologists Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun. It means after the devastation, after the breakdown, something new can emerge, not a return to who you were, but the arrival of who you're meant to become. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how the deepest wounds can shape the most powerful transformations and how philosophy has been preparing us for this all along. Let's begin with something. That sounds paradoxical. Suffering doesn't just destroy, it reveals. It pulls back the curtain on illusions you once clung to. It forces you to see what you never wanted to confront. Friedrich Nietzsche understood this well. He said, "One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star." That chaos? It's not failure, it's potential energy, it's creative fuel. When your world falls apart, you're handed a rare chance to rebuild it with intention, to ask, what do I want to carry forward? And what am I finally ready to leave behind? Growth begins when you no longer try to go back, and instead decide to go through. But let's be real, growth isn't automatic. Trauma can also lead to bitterness, numbness, and deep fear. So what makes the difference? Meaning, Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust, wrote, "Some ways suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning. Meaning doesn't erase pain. It transforms it. It gives pain a direction. So if you've been through something that shattered you, the question isn't just, why did this happen? It's, what will I make of it? How can this experience shape the way I love, lead, serve, create? Meaning doesn't always come quickly. Sometimes it takes months or years, but even the search for it is healing. One of the surprising outcomes of post-traumatic growth is a deeper appreciation for life. You stop taking things for granted. A breeze, a hug, the sun on your face. Why? Because trauma teaches you how fragile it all is. You wake up to the present. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "It is not death or pain that is to be dreaded, but the fear of pain or death." When you confront the worst and survive, you lose the fear that once held you captive. You realize, I've already lost what I thought I couldn't live without. And I'm still here, so you live differently, more honestly, more fully, more awake. And that in itself is growth. Another trait that emerges after trauma, inner strength. Not the kind that flexes or fights, but the kind that endures. There's a quiet confidence that comes from walking through hell and not letting it define you. Seneca said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." This is not glorifying suffering. It's acknowledging that resilience isn't just a trait, it's a skill. And trauma, when faced with courage, builds it. You start to recognize, I can hold more than I thought. I can survive heartbreak, failure, loss, and not just survive, but create something beautiful from it. Let's talk about relationships. Trauma can make you withdraw, but it can also deepen your sense of connection. People who experience post-traumatic growth often report a greater sense of empathy, compassion, and intimacy. Why? Because pain softens the walls around your heart, if you let it. The philosopher Simone Weil wrote, "The love of our neighbor in all its fullness simply means being able to say to him, 'What are you going through?' After trauma, you understand others in a way you couldn't before. You become someone who sees pain without turning away, who listens deeply, who shows up. That's growth that ripples far beyond your own healing. That's legacy. Now, here's something few talk about. You will lose parts of yourself. There is grief in growth. There are versions of you, naive, trusting, innocent, that don't survive trauma, and that's real loss. But the goal isn't to erase the past, it's to integrate it, to mourn who you were, and also welcome who you're becoming. Carl Jung captured this beautifully. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, and sometimes it takes devastation to meet that true self. You don't become whole by avoiding your scars. You become whole by understanding them, honoring them, and allowing them to guide you. Let's be practical. Post-traumatic growth isn't a mystical process. There are steps, mindsets, habits. Here are 3 to focus on. Reflection over reaction. Trauma puts you in survival mode, reacting, running, suppressing. Growth begins when you slow down, journal, reflect, ask, what has this experience changed in me? What strengths did I discover? This is how you harvest the lesson. Self-compassion over self-blame. You may carry shame, regret. Why didn't I see it coming? Why did I stay? But healing requires grace. As the philosopher Montaigne said, there is no passion so contagious as that of fear. And when fear runs high, we do what we must to survive. Forgive the version of you that didn't know better. Love them, they got you here. Contribution over rumination. Eventually, the pain becomes too heavy to carry alone. So give it away by helping others. Whether you share your story, create art, volunteer, or simply listen, use your wounds to water someone else's healing. That's how pain stops echoing and starts evolving. Here's the truth most people miss. Post-traumatic growth isn't about erasing what happened. It's about choosing to become someone new, with the wisdom of someone who's been through fire. You are not broken, you are being forged, and the self that emerges. They are not afraid of pain. They have befriended it. They are not obsessed with perfection. They are committed to authenticity. They are not looking to go back. They are walking forward, with depth, with purpose, with a power that no one gave them, because they earned it. So if you're in the aftermath of something heavy, if you're walking through a life you didn't choose, take heart. You are not just healing, you are evolving. The cracks in your story? That's where the light gets in. And what? You become on the other side, it won't be the same, it will be better, stronger, truer, unshakable.